to you, the class. Yes, all right. Well, welcome to bread class. You're in Char's kitchen, and bread is something that we teach here quite often, and of course, we have our Bosch mixer, and I believe this is one of the best mixers out there for making bread in your home. And we also have joining us Facebook Live, so if you have any questions, you can ask. So I'm going to get this bread started and get it kneading in my Bosch, and then I'll talk to you a little bit more about Bosch, maybe answer questions as you have them. So first off, I'm going to start with warm water, and we hand out recipes to everybody in class, and if you follow us online, our recipes are online. And the Char's recipe is a recipe that I think we've probably handed that out thousands and thousands of times, and that I think is fail-proof. So that's a good recipe to start with. So I'm starting with some warm water, and I just use my Bosch blender to measure out 6 cups of warm water. And you want that water just warm enough to activate your yeast. And these are my little magnetic measuring spoons, which are my favorite to use. And I'm using some Sap Instant yeast. I'm going to get a couple of heaping tablespoons, and that's all I'm going to need. And I also am going to add, I have some dough enhancer, and that's something that's a choice you can make if you want to add that. Sometimes when you're using whole grain, that little bit of dough enhancer is going to help you get a better rise on your bread. And this is some bread flour, which is also called high gluten flour. Now I'm using a high quality yeast, so I'm never really worried about it not activating. Okay, I use the Sap Instant, and it looks just like this. It's got pretty long shelf life. So I have my bread flour in there, and I'm going to do a couple of tablespoons of salt. And let me just tell you, bread without salt might look really beautiful because it gets nice and big and puffy, but if you don't add that salt, it tastes horrible. So be sure and remember the salt. And I've already measured out in here some oil and honey. I'm a huge, huge fan of honey. And you can use whatever kind of oil you want. And I like to use grapeseed oil. I know some people use canola. I'm not a huge fan of canola. You can use vegetable oil. I'm not really a huge fan of that either. But some people actually will use an olive oil, and you can do that, but it does affect the taste of your bread. Not that it's a bad thing, but it just is what it is. Okay, so some oil and honey. And this little silicone measuring cup I like because the stuff just slides right out. So, get my lid on here, and now I'm going to start adding my whole grain flour. Can you give me a measuring cup? How's that covered right here? Oh, never mind. Duh, got it right here. And I just ground some flour this morning, a few minutes ago actually. I think I turned my mic on. There we go. Am I on? Alright, so I grind my flour fresh, and I'm on speed 1. And I'm going to keep it on speed 1 until I have all the flour that I'm going to add. So that was 2, 4, this is 6. And I'm not telling you that you have to measure, but that's 8. And this is almost 10. So when you're using a Bosch, the really cool thing about it is, I'm going to let this Bosch tell me when it has enough flour. Now we give you an approximate measurement on your paper. And that measurement's it could fluctuate a little bit. Like today it was kind of rainy out, which is kind of exciting here in Arizona. To wake up to a little bit of rain. So if it's humid or really dry, it's going to affect it a little bit. But we have air conditioning units that pull the humidity out of the air. Is that not true? I mean, we do. So that measurement is not going to change too much. So you can get all your flour in here, and Now we're going to set our timer. I'm going to have Grace Ann over here set me a timer. I forgot to pull one out. And I'm going to let this knead. I'm going to turn it on speed 2. And I'm going to let this Bosch do the work for me. Now, this is the beauty of a Bosch. When I make my bread in here and then I shape it and put it in my loaf pans, guess what? It only has to rise one time. Because this Bosch is doing the work for me. Now, back in the day, when my grandma would make bread, guess what? She would let it rise, punch it down. How many of you have? Yeah, you remember those days. My mom used to do that because she was trying to develop the gluten. So we're going to let the Bosch do that for us. Now, I have the edge of my bowl here. It's pretty much cleaned the side of my bowl. And the center shaft, there's a little bit of dough there, but that looks like a good dough to me. It's kind of hard to mess up bread, but with that said, guess what? We all kind of mess up our bread once in a while, but that bread becomes croutons, French toast, you know. So anyway, while that's going, let me just show you a couple other things. In this jar is my natural yeast. This is also known as sourdough. So 100 years ago, guess what? You had to have this to make your bread. And I teach a lot of bread classes with this, and I love this, okay? Yes, and you brought your jars. We give you this for free if you bring us a jar. We can even ship this stuff too. We can dry it out into flakes and we ship this, but this is beautiful stuff. But mostly, you know, people are out using their rapid rise yeast, and so that's what we've got going on here. Once you open this yeast, like if I have a customer come in and they're like, oh, my bread's just not rising very well, first thing we ask them, okay, what kind of yeast are you using and how have you been taking care of it? Once you open this, this needs to go into an airtight jar, container, and it goes in your refrigerator or your freezer, okay? And it'll last you a good long time. And you'll notice too that I have my grain mill right here. I'm going to give you these. So I started with fresh, okay? That's important. And I have to tell you, years ago, right after I got married, my husband, first thing, he's like, can you learn to make bread? And I wanted to eat nutritious as well. And so it's really important to me what I fed my family. So I've had a grain mill, I think, my entire married life. My mom had a grain mill. Hers was a big box and very loud, didn't like to use it. But this is beautiful. It'll do all your grains. And it's really important that we start off with whole grain. When you buy flour out of the store, that grain has been stripped of the nutrients. And that's why we want to start with fresh and it's ground. And then if you're going to do your natural yeast bread, even better. That stuff is amazing. Okay, so some other equipment that I always have on hand is a scale. And years ago when I first started making bread, I did not have a scale. You know, you eyeball it. Trust me, very seldom do I ever get it exactly how I want it. So measuring it will help you make sure that every loaf comes out of the oven and it's done. And it's just nice to have them all kind of uniform looking. And I also like having my little bench scraper here, and I'll show you that too in a second. And then of course you got to have a good timer. Now, I know that a lot of people are busy. I mean, we have jobs, moms are busy, dads are busy, but we still need to feed ourselves. We need to feed our family. And I will tell you this, for years, I raised my kids on this bread, and I could literally get up in the morning, get out my mill, this will hold about 5 pounds of grain, turn that on. While it's grinding, I'm getting out my Bosch, my other little ingredients that we just talked about, and by the time this is done, you get about a cup of flour every 60 seconds, I think. It's really fast. So I can have my bread mixing, and while it's mixing, put everything away, and then I can shape my loaves and have it in the oven ready to rise in about 15-20 minutes. So very, very fast you can do these breads. And you know, if it matters to you what you eat, then you do want to have that whole grain bread. Do you have any questions so far? I know you came with one, yeah. Oh, she asked how long do I set my timer. I let this go 7 minutes, pretty much. And I'm going to show you how to tell. Whoop, that's the loudest timer on the planet. Yeah, I could be in the office and I hear that go off. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off. That looks a little on the sticky side, but I think we're going to go with it. Oh, my timer actually only said 5 minutes, so I'm going to let it go another minute. Oh, you just keep an eye on it for me.
That's all I need then. 5:50.
Another minute?
Come off on 6 minutes.
Okay. I like to use a little bit of oil on my counter. I know some people would do a little flour. I think it's tempting when you do flour that you end up over flouring your bread. But I do think that little bit of oil keeps the dough itself softer, so when it's rising, I like what it does to the crust. So I just put a little bit of oil out here.
Grapeseed oil?
Pardon?
Grapeseed?
Yes, I'm using grapeseed oil. I think it's pretty neutral in taste. I know it does have a slight taste, but I can't detect it in my bread at all. So that's why I use grapeseed. And again, I already talked to you about the honey. Love raw honey. Get honey that's, you know, local to your area. And I also have my bread pans. I use what's called a 2-pound loaf pan, and we spray it. Ooh, and we have these papers. Do you notice if you can find? They're down there. Oh, we found the coolest papers ever. They're like a silicone disposable paper, but you can use them over and over and over. Yes, those are it. This is a product that we have, and I know our pans are non-stick pans, but whole grains kind of like to stick. So we just spray, and it's called Vegeline. It's less sticky than some of the more common ones that you see out there in the grocery store. But these little papers, loving these papers. They just fit right in there. And especially when I'm making my natural yeast bread, those tend to want to stick a little bit because they're in the pans for so long.
So why not canola oil? Why not canola oil?
I don't necessarily like the canola oil because it's really, talk about GMO. That's one I kind of stay away from. I don't think it's as healthy as we used to think it was. But good news, you can use whatever you want, all right? And you could even make bread without oil. And I learned that by accident, you know? Sometimes you forget. You get making something, you get distracted, the phone rings or something. Okay, so I'm going to grab all this out. And the cool thing about a Bosch too is you can very, very easily do 14 pounds of dough. So you might be thinking, whoa, I don't need 14 pounds of dough. But think about it. What if you took that 14 pounds and shaped a couple of bread loaves, maybe you made a few hamburger buns and maybe a couple of pizza crusts. Now you've just made all the bread your family might need for the week. Now when my kids are all home and you know, I just got to touch it sometimes. Get it out. So I used to go through about 50 pounds of wheat a month, you know, because I was making bread for a large family. Now, for you, smaller families, you might think, well, there's no way I need 5 or 6 loaves of bread. And that may be true. So do a little half batch, which is easy to do now when you have this little dough extender, which I need to show you here in a second. Okay, so done with that. This is the little dough hook extender. I should have showed that to you before I got started. But that goes right under the dough hook, and this little piece is shaped to fit the bottom of the Bosch bowl. So now if you want to make that one little loaf of bread, that works great. Okay, so I have my scale. Now the fun part, shaping some loaves. Yes, please.
Question. Can this particular recipe, say you did make a big batch up and you only want to use half of it, can you put the other half in the refrigerator and then for a couple days and then
The
let
dough?
it sit out? Yes, just the
Okay.
dough. And then let it sit out to come to temperature and rise.
Right, so she's asking if can you just put the dough in the fridge. This particular dough, I really wouldn't. Even if you put it in the fridge, it's still going to continue to rise. And then when you end up putting the oven, you won't have that last oven bump, you know. My preference is to make the bread and freeze it. You can freeze dough, and I've done that too. It does okay. It's just not as good.
And
You
even
just
with
start
the meat, if it how it did with the meat.
right. And I know you can go to the grocery store and buy rolls that are already frozen, and then they're going to rise and bake. And oh my gosh, I can't imagine how much grease they have to put in there to make that happen. But we have experimented a lot here in our kitchen. I know that you can par bake something and have it defrost, and even still, it's not the same. So yeah, I would much prefer to just bake it and let that freezer be your best friend, you know. Okay, so I've got 4 loaves, and again, I use a little bit of my oil here. Now,
1 pound 14 or 13 pounds?
I did 1 pound 14. Sometimes I do 1 pound 13. It's what you want. I used to put a lot more, and my loaves were gigantic, and I'm like, so I backed off a little bit on that. But let me just show you really quick what dough looks like when you develop the gluten. I always call this the wet bubblegum test. I can thin this out and stretch it, and it literally will bounce back and forth without tearing. It's bubblegum, okay? That's the gluten in the bread. Gluten is the protein in the bread. So this is how I do a loaf. Everybody has their own little method. I like to flatten mine out. Again, I have a little bit of oil on the counter. And I want the top of my bread to be pretty and nice and smooth. So just take another one here. So I'm shaping these into loaves. I don't have to like put it in a bowl and let it rise and then, you know, punch it down and then shape. I just shape them. They're ready to go. And if you don't shape a very pretty loaf, you know, that's okay. I tell this story all the time. I asked my daughter once when she was quite young, I got the dough ready, and I said, oh honey, I gotta step out for just a second. Can you put the dough in the pans for me? And she said, yeah. So it just went like, choom, like that. It's okay. This wasn't very pretty, but it still tasted fine. So making bread is just, I don't know, it's a labor of love, but it doesn't have to be a big time consuming thing. And I honestly, I've tried other mixers. I've had friends say, hey, can you come and help me make bread at my house with my mixer? And hey, I'm always up for a challenge. So I have tried, and I don't know if there's anything out there that does it like a Bosch for you. And I love a company that stands behind their product. Now, if I want to extend this recipe a little bit, I actually backed off a little bit on the water because I didn't know how much flour I needed to go get more wheat. So I got good 4 loaves. This little mini guy, sometimes what I'd like to do is just roll this out, punch it out, and maybe I'll have Grace Ann grab me a small loaf pan. But I'll sprinkle a little honey, or not honey, cinnamon, sugar. I don't even put butter on it, but I'll roll it up.
There's the rest of
Oh, perfect.
I would make a hamburger bun.
Oh, hamburger buns? You can shape them just like a roll, like you can pinch it. You might measure the first couple just to see how big you want it. I would do it just like that.
Do those on a cookie sheet?
Yep, just like that. There's your hamburger bun.
That's gonna rise.
Yes, you're gonna want to let it rise.
Can you do this guy?
This one. So let's talk about baking the bread very quickly. This is what I do. Done this for years. Unless, if I'm doing natural yeast bread, no. My natural yeast bread goes in the pan and that's gonna rise 7-8 hours, like this. So for this bread, the Busy Mom method, I'm gonna turn my oven on to maybe 200 degrees for a couple minutes and then turn it off, okay? Off. And now that oven is just nice and warm. And this goes in there, and I set my timer so that I don't forget about it. And then after about 30 minutes or so, I'm gonna check it. Ooh, will you give me a small glass measuring cup? I'm gonna show you a foolproof way to know if it's doubled in size. So I put it in that warm oven, and after 30, 40 minutes, just depends on how warm your oven is, then what I'm looking for is for that bread, not an entire complete double, right? Because now I'm going to turn my oven on and it's going to preheat. And during the preheat, perfect. During the preheating, it's going to continue to rise, and then it starts baking. So, just to repeat, I put this in a warm oven, and it's turned off, set my timer just so I don't forget about it, and then I'm going to check it. And then when it's almost doubled in size, I'll turn it on to 350 and then set my timer. And then it bakes, okay? So this is going straight into my oven. It's not going to come out until it's done, okay? So that works, but you need to know your oven and know how long your oven takes to preheat. I had an oven, it kind of took a while, so I just set my oven for 40 minutes at, 350. But let me just show you one more quick thing, because a lot of us like, oh, did it double in size? I don't know. So if you have a little glass measuring cup like this, take a little bit of your dough, put it down in here, try to get like a half a cup, and now I can set this in the oven or next to my bread. Maybe you want to let it rise on the counter, whatever. When this doubles in size, when it becomes a cup, guess what? Simple math, you know that this is doubled in size. Perfect. Okay, and this is just going to be a little low going here. All right, it's going to bake, come out, let it cool. I do take it right out of the pans and let it cool. And then if you can wait that long, right, that your slice wanting to eat. So anyway, any other questions?
Do you spray the papers?
The papers we do not spray. And I have some over there on that higher shelf that I've used probably 4 times. Love it. And there's 2 sizes. And one more thing I want to show you. Your bread needs to be, I say 200 degrees. I'm pretty sure most people would agree with that. Some might think a little less, but if you're wondering if your bread is done, after your timer dings, take it out. You're going to have a nice big loaf. I just leave it in the pan, but I kind of stick it in the corner, and I'm looking for that 200 degrees. And because I've weighed out all my bread, I know they're all the same size, then I know they're done. So anyway, I wouldn't be without a scale. I love having my little bench scraper, and then of course having a mixer. If I had to make bread by hand, I could do it. I sure just don't want to, but I could. But having a mill. So
While your bread's cooking, do you rotate your pans?
I do not rotate my pans when it's in the oven. I guess if you have a really crappy oven, I don't know, you might have to rotate them. But no, I don't rotate my pans. So, any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming and enjoy our bread. We'll serve you some here in just a second.